Hello everyone, my name is Eliott. Very nice to be here, and thank you Ashton for inviting me. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm currently doing Oracle research with Jonathan. And today my goal is going to be to explain why the Oracle problem hasn't been solved yet, what current solutions have been proposed, like Chainlink or Pith Network, and why they aren't good solutions, and try to give you some intuition into what I'm working on and how we could go about solving this problem. So the goal is all about incentivizing honesty, and obviously I'm not going to dive too deep into the math, but rather try to give you some intuition so that everybody can understand. So firstly, what is the Oracle problem? It's a very classic problem in the sense that it's just a statistical estimator. So a statistical estimator is very simple. You have a set of observations and you want to have a conclusion. So for example, this could be how effective is a new medicine that I'm about to commercialize. It could be the weather report, so having some observations on the weather, what will be tomorrow's weather. This is widely studied in statistics. There are a lot of theorems, a lot of academia. So if it's such a studied subject, why hasn't the Oracle problem been solved? It shouldn't be anything new. So to give you an example on how a statistical estimator works, let's take the most simple case, in my opinion, is a medicine. So we are a researching lab. We have just developed a new medicine and we would like to know if it's effective so that we can commercialize it or not. How does this work? Typically, once we have the medicine, we send samples to different hospitals, hospitals we trust. These hospitals are then going to select patients that are willing to undergo the testing phase, and each hospital will test on the patients for a month or more, depending on what results they need. Once the tests have been done, they gather reports, blood samples or whatnot, and send it back. Once all the hospitals have the report, they send it back to the lab. And then the lab can draw a conclusion on, is the medicine effective? So why do we trust that these hospitals are going to give us the good data? Why are they not going to lie? Because there's a lot of regulation, and they have no incentive to give false report. They could get sued. There could be some pretty bad consequences. So this is how statistical estimators work. We want to test something, we test it on different subjects, we have a lot of observations, and then we conclude on whether it's effective or not. What happens if one of the hospitals actually decides to take a bet on the pharmaceutical lab being sued? So now, say they've bet $1 million on them being sued in the next year. Their incentive is now to lie so that the pharmaceutical lab will get sued. How do they do that? They give false reports saying the medicine is more effective than it actually is. The pharmaceutical lab is going to believe them and is going to end up commercializing a medicine that does not work. It does that. Once it's commercialized, there's going to be people who have side effects or bad consequences. Result, they get sued, and now the hospital has made $1 million. So this is the essence of the Oracle problem, is that your data sources have an incentive to lie. If your Oracle misreports, there's going to be liquidations, there's going to be assets that can be bought cheaper than they really are, so it creates arbitrage, it creates a lot of opportunity. So if I go create a permissionless Oracle, I ask 100 people for the price of Bitcoin, their incentive is to give me a false report. This is all of the difficulty, is because we're going to estimate based on malicious data sources. So what is the problem? If I go ask n different people the price of Bitcoin, they all have a belief x1 to xn. These are the true prices. Everyone knows it. It's different for everyone. For example, If I go check the price on Binance, I'll have a different price than someone who goes check the price on Metsi. I have these beliefs. Then each player is going to submit a report to the Oracle. The problem is, the Oracle only has access to the reports, not to the beliefs. Which means that if some people have lied, I'm going to have to use this false data to have a conclusion on what the price actually is. So everyone has a report Y1 to Yn. What does this mean is that a good oracle should incentivize everyone to give a Y that is equal to X. My report should be what I believe. Even if my belief might be wrong, for example, I went to get the price on an exchange with very low liquidity, then as long as I'm honest, that's what a good oracle should be. So let's take a very simple example. Here we have the reports of, say, several hundred players to who we ask the price of an asset. You can see that most of the players are going to agree the price is about 9.25. In this case, if I ask you who is lying, it's pretty obvious that the people who are lying are the 5 players who are outliers. Here, our intuition acts as a median would. If the vast majority of people agree on a price, then there's no reason to think that this is not the correct price. An estimator is always going to say that the price is going to be somewhere in here, 9.25. If you take the median, the mean, you're going to have to agree with the vast majority. There is no other choice if you don't have more information than the reports. So this was a very simple case where we can all intuitively agree what the price is. Turns out it's going to be much more complicated even in this case. Now, a tougher case. Who's lying now? If you create an Oracle game, say everyone has to pay $10 to participate in the game, you need people to be rewarded because if I play the game, I want to make money, or else there's no incentive for me to even participate. If people win money, then other people have to lose money. So what does this mean? Here, who are we going to deem as giving a false report? Who are we going to reward? So intuitively, how do most oracles work? Reward people who are closest to the median, and then we can slash these people who are a bit too high, these people who are a bit too low. But what is the problem is, what if these people were honest? Now, you can argue they have bad observations, but they're honest. So if they're honest, do you really want to slash someone who actually tried to participate in the game? For me, it doesn't really make sense. And then, what happens if someone had a price right down the middle, but decided to lie by a small amount? So he's still very close to the median, but now you can't detect him. He's right there in the middle. How would you even determine that he's an outlier? You can't. So now, how does the median work? There is always an incentive to lie by a small amount, because you are skewing the oracle, even if it's by a little bit. You're creating a false report, theoretically, and you're not slashed. You're actually rewarded to do so. This is why the median is not the best solution. So I lied. Who was right in this case? It was actually these 5 players were giving the true price. Everyone else was being wrong. How can this happen? Imagine the government has an incentive to create fake news. So Donald Trump goes to see every single player and tells them, okay, what I would like is for you guys to report the price you believe is the price you were going to report minus about $0.5. So what does this mean? Every single player has an incentive to create this false report of minus 0.5. Why? So classical median estimator is going to reward people closest to the median. Do you agree that if I take this histogram of all dishonest people, wherever this histogram is on the chart, it doesn't matter. My in-game reward is how far I am from the median, not how far I am from the true price. So if I take this histogram, throw it to $1,000, the person who's closest to the median still makes money. So there's money to be made by being completely dishonest as soon as there is any sort of collusion. So the median rewards people based on how close they are to the majority, not how close they are from the true price. This could be arbitrarily false, as you see here, and the person who's going to get slashed here are the only honest players who didn't want to actually create a false price. They were just honest for no particular reason, and they lose money to do so. This is why the median cannot work as a good oracle. A median is good if the majority of players are honest, which is a flawed assumption. People here aren't honest. They want to make the most money. If there's money to be made by lying, they will do it. This is how you prove security on Bitcoin, on consensus mechanisms, and if you base it on people being rational, so wanting to make the most money, you cannot use the median. So if we go back to this example, and we think that it's actually impossible to detect someone who lied just by a little bit and stays inside the histogram, close to the median, is it even possible to solve this problem? Because if we can't even see it to the naked eye, how are we going to detect someone who lied by a small amount as opposed to someone who was honest but just had a bigger error? So let me give you some intuition into limit order books. What is the price of an asset? If I believe the price of Bitcoin today is 100K, what does that mean? That means that if the price is much lower, I should be willing to buy it. If the price is much higher, I should be willing to sell. This is how I determine my true price. It's the price at which I'm willing to trade. So this is how we're going to create our oracle based on limit order books. So if someone reports that Bitcoin is $1 million to an oracle, as a matter of fact, if everyone is willing to do so in a median, the median's just going to report $1 million. But I argue that if someone reports $1 million, then now if I come to him and say, okay, I've got a Bitcoin, I'm selling it for 500K, he should be willing to buy it. So that's what the oracle is going to do, is going to force him to buy what he said. If he said $1 million, he should be willing to buy beneath it. So this is the intuition into what the oracle does. Everyone plays the game. Everyone pays $10 to participate in the oracle game. If someone, so I'm a player, I participate, I say to the oracle, the price, I believe, of Kaspa is $1. What does that mean? That means that price is above, I'm willing to sell, price is below, I'm willing to buy. And the further the price is from $1, the more I should be willing to buy or sell. If the price for one Kaspa is $100, there should be reason for me to sell if I believe it's not worth that. So with the $10, $100, or how much each player is going to have to participate, it's going to create sell orders and buy orders around the committed price, which means now there is consequences to your lie. If I report the price of Bitcoin being $1 million, that means that any price for which someone is going to sell me lower than $1 million, I'm going to have to buy. And so given I lied, I'm going to be at a loss. Same thing goes if I report the price of Bitcoin as $1, then I'm going to have to buy much higher. Even if someone gives me Bitcoin for $2, I'm going to have to buy or I'm going to have to sell. So now we're going to use a discriminatory auction to enforce the commitment. What we want is that when someone says a price, they really have to believe it. So they should be willing to trade very close to that price. So what is the discriminatory auction? Imagine you go to a merchant to buy apples. The merchant, the store is a bit particular. The price tag of apples is faced towards not the customer, but the merchant. What this means is when I go up to the stand, I cannot see the price at which the apples are sold. If I believe the apples are worth $1, I go up to the merchant, tell him, okay, I'm willing to buy the apples for $1. Once I give him my price, he turns around the pre-written envelope or the pre-written price tag. He tells me, actually the price of an apple was $1.50. This means there's no transaction to be made. I said a price that was too low. Nothing happens. I can only come back the next day, so I go home without my apple. On the other hand, if I say $1 and he turns back his envelope and now there's written 50 cents, he's selling apples for 50 cents. I want to buy for $1. So now there's a transaction to be made. What is a discriminatory auction? It means that I'm going to pay $1 for the apple and the merchant receives 50 cents. And the 50 cents difference are either thrown away, given to the government, to the Oracle mechanism, wherever you want, but go neither to the customer, neither to the merchant. This enforces I need to commit the price that I say. If I believe it's $1, then I will pay $1. There's no reason for me to pay lower than what I said. Remember, the whole goal here is for people to actually give the correct price. So if I go up to the merchant, tell him, I lie, one apple is $10, then chances are he's going to sell for much lower. So he's going to sell an apple for $1 and I'm going to end up paying $10 per apple. On the other hand, if I go and say one apple is 10 cents, then probably I'm not going to be able to transact because it's going to be higher. I have to actually give him the price I'm willing to pay, because if I transact, I will transact at that price. So now we have the setup. How do we create an Oracle mechanism? Imagine a game where there's 100 players participating each day. Each player is a merchant. They all have their apple stock. So they all have apples, they all have their stand. However, going back to the intuition we were trying to give before, when I have my envelope, so at the start of the day, I'll write $1 on my envelope, which means that the prices of my apple, if someone wants to come buy them, is $1 or more. What this means is I am now forced to act as a merchant, but also as a customer. If someone is selling apples for less than $1, I should be willing to buy them, because that means I can take those apples, put them at my little store, and sell them at a profit. If someone is buying for 10 cents, I should be willing to buy all his apples, because I'm going to sell for more. So now, two things. First scenario, I lie. I write $10 per apple. What happens is that every other merchant is going to come to my store and say, okay, I'm selling apples for $1. That should be a steal for me because I believe it's $10, so I'm going to buy everyone's apples. However, now, I'm selling my apples for $10, nobody's going to buy them. I have made a huge loss because I lied. The price was not $10 and I knew it. I bought everyone else's stock because I was forced to, not because I didn't, not because I wanted to, because I was forced to. Same thing, what happens if I say the price of an apple is 10 cents, whereas everyone else believes it's $1, then I can sell all my apples at 10 cents, but I've lied. I was trying to lowball everyone, but turns out that no one's going to buy my apples at 10 cents. No one is going to sell. I'm going to have to give my apples to everyone else because I gave a false price, it was too low. So there's no incentive to be too high, because if I'm too high, I'm going to be forced to buy at very high prices. If I say Bitcoin is $1 million, I'm probably going to buy everyone else's. And even if someone was also lying with me and said Bitcoin is 500K, I'm going to have to buy from this guy. So the incentive now is to be honest. If I lie by being too high, then I'm going to have buy orders above the true price. If I'm too low, I'll have sell orders beneath the true price. I'm at a loss. The incentive is to be honest. What this means is we've created at least a property that no Oracle currently have, which is that my optimal strategy is to be honest when I report a price. Now there's going to be a lot of things to take into account, namely the buy and sell curve. Do we want it to be linear? Do we want it to be more aggressive? And this is going to play a role in the strategies of the players. So that is the intuition into how to solve the Oracle problem. you don't use a median where everyone is rewarded based on a false belief that the price is where what the majority says. It's actually a limit order book. At limit order book, the price, do we agree that if there was one big limit order book, just like in traditional finance, there would be no need for an oracle? Everyone would agree on the price, because if they disagree, they should just buy and sell and move the price up or down. So this is the intuition we're trying to recreate in DeFi, which is people committing to their prices so that they report honestly. So this is currently the model I'm working on. Now there's a lot of proofs, because we want to prove that there is no better strategy than to be honest. And then we'll be able to determine if the oracle actually reports the honest price. So yeah, thank you very much. I hope it was clear enough as to why oracles don't work.